Hey YouTube, hey, it's been a while since I've been on here, and I got some exciting news to share with you. Today is April 25th, 2019. Finally, can we all say, Giga, it's coming, I told you. Well, let's put it this way, we know it's time. It's time for Kings Island to have their Giga roller coaster. If you get on the Eiffel Tower and get up on the top, you can look over, see all the new construction. And with this start and this time of the year in the early season, we know it's going to be a big project, and it will be completed for next spring. Being given that B&M was listed a couple years ago in the City of Mason plans for construction at Kings Island, that the B&M was part of the construction project people to put new things in at Kings Island, you know, new construction people for like the new barbecue restaurant that they put in, Coney Barbecue, and put in the new antique cars, the antique ride, and also all the other improvements for International Street, the fountain, the Royal Fountain, and all the other little things as well. It's so exciting. What an exciting year we're having at Kings Island. 2019, and here we are, got a brand new entrance. I mean, the entrance is phenomenal. Well, after you get past the main gate, I mean, it's phenomenal. It's a beautiful looking International Street. All the big trees have been chopped down, so that means at nighttime you'll be able to see the fireworks very clearly off of anywhere off of National Street. They're going to have a laser light show that's going to be a light show with the waters, the dancing waters. These fountains will be able to dance, sway, and do all that good stuff whenever that starts around, I think, Memorial Day weekends when it's going to begin. So, and it's going to have a light show and all that good stuff. All that's going to come up. So, that's coming, and also they got that new Carnival thing that's going to be this year. That's something new that Kings Island is going to be doing, which is going to be like a Mardi Gras type parade on International Street. That's going to be really nice too. It's going to be something brand new that no other Cedar Fair park has. We're the only park that's going to have it. Kings Island is going to have it. It's the first park to have it. They're doing some other things at the other Cedar Fair parks, something about Monster Jam or something. Something to do with big trucks, I guess. But I'd say probably eventually maybe that might come to Kings Island later on down the road. Maybe, I don't know. But however, Kings Island has put in these new attractions for this year, which one big project they did, which made me very happy, was they fixed at the Fest House, Glockenspiel has been fixed, the clock. And oh man, I've begged for them to fix that for the last several years, because it's a shame whenever it broke and it just went on the wayside and nobody decided to fix it, repair it, or nothing. It just sat there boarded up and not being used at all. And it really disappointed me, because it was, you know, something really nice, and it's something, you know, that people can sit down and just kind of enjoy and watch whenever it comes on, and a neat little thing, you know. It's nothing big, but still it's something. It's a little charm, and it's part of the park, and it brings back history. So I'm glad that that's fixed. Thank you to Cedar Fair. Thank you for listening and fixing that. And thank you for bringing back the beautiful antique cars. The antique cars are beautiful. What a nice thing to do, and that's the best thing for the families to enjoy. Not only can the families, you know, I mean, I understand the teenagers don't care too much about the cars, but it's more for the families, for the little ones, and the parents and grandparents to be able to enjoy together. And that's what makes memories, and that's what makes Kings Island so great, is the memories that you can spend with your children and grandchildren over there. The big news today, like I said, is if you go to the park up on the Eiffel Tower, get on top, you can see the construction big time. I mean, it is starting to go big time. It started. All the area where Firehawk was, that's all cleared out, of course, except for the queue. The queue lines are still there, the old Firehawk queue lines, which I think they'll use for the new roller coaster. The station's gone. However, they will need a new station for the new roller coaster, because they couldn't. There's no way they could have utilized the old station. I don't think it would have made sense to keep it. So that's gone, but the photo booth is still there. So the on-ride photos, that booth, it's still standing as well. There is a new maintenance shack that's going up way out in the forest. You'll be able to see that as well. They're building a brand new maintenance shack that's out a little bit further out into the trees. And the reason for that is because I think that the maintenance shacks that they have currently right there by Firehawk, that was right there real close by the big red buildings there, I think those are going to be torn down to make way for the new roller coaster. And the new roller coaster is going to go down all the way down past the antique cars. Well, it's going to be on the other side of the racers, but like I said, down where the antique cars that way. All that land is getting cleared out right now. All them trees, everything, they're gone. They're cleared out. They got bulldozers back here dozing and everything right now. I mean, they're going to town on it. And last weekend, the construction was kind of cleared out a little bit over there where Dinosaurs Alive used to be, but now it's really cleared out. And it's a lot further back. Now it's down back behind the racer turnaround. That's how far back that this project is. So they're going all the way back behind the racers, the turnaround, way back by the motion theater, the old motion theater, back behind there. That's all cleared out back in there. They're clearing it out right now. So I do believe that this is going to be the Giga Coaster, because if you think about it, Cedar Fair, out of all the Cedar Fair parks, Kings Island is a major park, okay? They're one of their biggest money-making parks that they got in the chain, okay? And I understand Osprey Farm, well, they're kind of tight on land. They're landlocked big time, okay? So they don't really have room for a massive big roller coaster like other parks do. But stop and think, Kings Island, they have room. And I mean, Kings Dominion, they had room, they got theirs. They got their Giga. All right? Carowinds, they got their Giga. Fury 325, okay? Well, it's time for another big Giga coaster. It's time. Kings Island's got their time right now. Canada's Wonderland, they got their Giga, okay? They've got theirs. And now they got another massive dive coaster this year. So I don't think it's going to be a B&M dive coaster, because why would they want to top out the dive coaster at Canada's Wonderland, okay? Which I know Toronto is a little distance from here. I've been to Toronto. I've been to Canada's Wonderland, a beautiful park. I love it. It's a great park. But I just don't see them trying to top out a dive coaster that's that close proximity to other Cedar Fair parks. I just don't see them doing that, okay? I know Cedar Point first got a dive coaster, but pretty much their dive coaster was landlocked where it was at. To where they put it. So they was kind of landlocked where they was at with theirs to make it a bigger coaster. They probably couldn't really went much higher than what they did. Canada's Wonderland, they had the room. They had more room to where they could have went higher and faster and bigger, and that's what they did, okay? I just don't see them making a dive coaster that's going to be that high or try to top that one off. Wing coaster, Gatekeeper's an awesome wing coaster. I just don't see them topping that one out just yet, because that's still a draw item to Cedar Point to get people to come to the point. Millennium Force is 20 years old, okay? Hey, what's nothing better than to bring Ohio the next biggest Giga coaster in the world, so to Kings Island. I'm telling you, I think it's going to be a 350-foot roller coaster, Giga coaster, and I'd say it's going to go right around 100 miles an hour, okay? Probably about 98 to 102, right in that vicinity. And I do believe that it's going to be a big project. It's going to take some time to build, but if you think about it, even if it's the world's largest Giga coaster, if we make this coaster as big like it's going to be, which I'm just telling you, I know it's got to be a Giga. It's got to be. Plus, I can't really talk, but if you stop and think about it, the B&M plant, which is Claremont Steel Fabricating, which is in Batavia, Ohio, is just right down the road from Kings Island, okay? It's not that far. If you go down 71 and hit 275, which is about 3 or 4 miles from the park, and then you get on 275 and go to about another 15 miles, then you're in Batavia, okay? And that's where the B&M plant is. The track's made right there. Well, if they sit there and ship the track, they don't have to ship it all the way to Canada's Wonderland. They don't have to ship it all the way to Cedar Point or way down to North Carolina. So they can ship it faster, quicker, and cheaper. So Kings Island can get a big Giga coaster, and it'll be cheaper. It can be bigger, and they could start on it a little bit later than they did the other projects like Cedar Points and the other ones, because it's closer to home. You know, closer to home base where the factory is. So I'm telling you, folks, this got to be a B&M coaster. Now, remember, 2 years ago, the plans were for the Giga coaster. I mean, not Giga, excuse me. The plans showed B&M was part of the construction, future construction at Kings Island. So we know it's a B&M coaster. We know that. Okay, and that's the evidence has been clear. It's been shown. So everybody knows it's going to be a B&M. What kind of B&M, how tall, how fast, the colors, any of that, we don't know. Not yet. So somebody needs to go down to Batavia and snoop around. I would, but my car is kind of on the fritz. I don't want to drive that far. But if somebody out there that watches this video goes down to Batavia, Claremont Steel Fabricating, and starts looking around, you know, snooping around, I guarantee you're going to find Kings Island track on their premises right now. I guarantee it. That's going to be out there in the parking lot, or you know, out in their areas where their storage lot. Somebody needs to get down there, check it out, look and see what kind of track it is, and that will tell us what kind of coaster the Kings Island is going to get. Because everybody knows what the dive coaster looks like, everybody knows what the wing coaster track looks like, and everybody knows what a Giga coaster track would look like, basically, from B&M history. So somebody out there, get down there, check it out. I guarantee you right now you'll probably find out exactly what kind of coaster Kings Island is going to get. Now, Kings Island will probably start dropping hints of their new roller coaster probably within the next week or two. I would say that they're going to start hinting around and start dropping little things, you know, of their new attraction. They did take Firehawk out. It was a roller coaster. So coaster count is down by 1 now for this year. So Kings Island's going to bring it back up. So the coaster is on the way. And we know it's a B&M because it was what's in the file with City of Mason. So we know it's coming. Thank you, Cedar Fair. Thank you so much. But now I'm going to tell you another thing too. They have invested a lot of money into this park. A lot of people thought, well, Cedar Fair is going to buy Kings Island and they're going to close it up because they're too close to Cedar Point. That's not true, okay? If you stop and think about it, Ohio has become a one-stop destination for roller coaster enthusiasts. You can come down here to Ohio and you can make a week-long trip and go up north for 2 or 3 days, Cedar Point, come down south for 2 or 3 days to Kings Island. So you can go up and have a nice trip on Lake Erie and then come down south, or you can come down south and go up there. Either way, you can make a whole week family adventure out of hitting 2 of the best amusement parks in the whole country. So stop and think about it. You know, Kings Island's going to be here to stay. And look at the improvements that they've put into that park. I mean, they put, look at the biggest investments that Cedar Fair has installed into Ohio, into Kings Island. The biggest improvements and biggest rides that they've implemented and put in at Kings Island, Diamondback was $22 million. I mean, that's a lot. That's a pretty big roller coaster. And that's a B&M, and that was just made down the road, right? And also, they installed Banshee, another B&M coaster, which was made right down the road, $24 million. Mystic Timbers, which was a GCI and a wooden coaster that wood does pretty good at Kings Island with the Beast and all, and the racers. So that became another great wooden roller coaster as well. And Mystic Timbers was $15 million. Okay, so really there's a lot of money being spent there. That's a lot of money that's been invested into Cedar Point, from Cedar Fair into Kings Island. And with this year, with the money they spent on renovating International Street, I mean, that was a lot of money right there spent just this year. I mean, I don't know what the price tag was. And of course, the antique car ride, I would estimate that it probably was about $1 million that they spent on that. Maybe $2 million at the most. But that had a cost for the demolition of the current area and get it all fixed up, and rerun the electric and water lines and whatever else that they had to fix for that certain area. And then for the ride components itself, the concrete, all the concrete work, the buildings that they had to build, and plus the cars themselves. So, and they're nice cars. Oh man, they're heavy duty. They're really nice cars. These are nicer cars than what they had back in the 70s, back when they first opened the park. So this is definitely a really nice, very nice ride that they put in. The antique car is very nice. And again, thank you, Cedar Point, or not Cedar Point in particular, but Cedar Fair in particular. Thank you so much for investing into Kings Island and keeping our home park here alive and well. And thank you for listening, because you have listened and you've done a lot. You have done so much for the park. And I'm so grateful that you have done so much to the park. And I'm glad to see that it's coming back to life. I think that Paramount kind of dragged the park down from its glory days. I used to work at Kings Island. I worked back there whenever I was a teenager. I worked there starting in 1984, and I worked in 85, 86, 87, 88, and 89. I worked all those seasons, and I also worked Winterfest all those seasons. I was basically a full-time employee, with the exception I took 1 month off out of the whole year. So that kept me from being a full-time employee, but I was there 11 months out of the year. So, I worked through Winterfest, the Halloween thing, and worked there through the fall season and summer and spring, and we was even there before spring. And I was on working there in 87 whenever they built Vortex, and that's where the former Bat from roller coaster from 1982, when it was built, it was just that was an awesome coaster. Oh my God, I loved it. So much better than the current Bat that they have now. But the problem was that the track wasn't banked, and it had a lot of problems, unfortunately. It just couldn't stay. They couldn't keep that ride going because there's just too many mechanical nightmares, and the ride just couldn't make it. But it was an awesome coaster. If you had the chance to ride it, you know what I mean, because it was one hell of a coaster. But unfortunately, it met its demise. It just couldn't operate correctly. So Aerodynamics, they went ahead and they gave Kings Island a really good deal for Vortex, and replaced the Bat with Vortex, which was an awesome coaster. And I was on the very first train with people that rode the Vortex, and we was working, and we was cleaning the food stands, getting them ready for spring, getting ready to open for the year. And that's what we started doing in the months of February and March. We would clean all the food stands in the whole park. When we'd clean, there's a group of us that we went in and we'd scrub the stands, ceiling tiles, light fixtures. The whole stand, the whole thing got cleaned top to bottom, scrubbed. And the walls, floors, and all. Everything got scrubbed. And we was back here where, I think it's called Jukebox Diner now. I don't really pay attention to that anymore, across from Shake Round and Roll. But it used to be called Coney Cafe years ago. And we was in there cleaning that food stand, and we heard the chain start up on the Vortex. First time it started up, we heard that thing fire up, and we was like, oh, look, they're going to start it up. So, and they did. They sent a train around, the very first train. They sent around, and it had, I believe they had some sandbags, and some of it had water dummies. But they set that first train around, and we watched it. It went down the first hill and up, then around above where the Roses patio is, Rivertown went above that. Then it come around, it went through the very first loop, and it barely made it. Then when it go through the second loop, didn't make it. So it valleyed out between the two loops. And that kind of depressed them, I guess, because they was like, well, shit, we got a problem here. But the problem was it was a brand new track, brand new everything. The wheels were too tight. Okay, the wheels were a little bit too tight on the roller coaster, so they had to loosen them. So they had to readjust the wheels and readjust all that good stuff. Finally, they was able to run it, and it cleared. And plus, it was really cold that day too. So with weather and all that, it was, you know, all that into consideration, it was made it where the vortex couldn't make it through. So eventually they got to go through and everything was fine, not a problem. So we was begging. We went over and said, hey, when you going to let us ride? When you going to let us ride? So they was like, well, we can't do it yet. We got to go through all these test cycles and blah, blah, blah. So they was constantly running that thing for about 3 days, just continuous. And they said that whenever they would let us ride, they would let us know, and they would let the Kings Island workers ride. So the day came. It was like 3 days later, 4 days later, I think it was the fourth day, and they told us over the intercom speaker system in the park, and there was not very many people working, maybe 50 or 60 people at the park working at the time. And they said, all right, all employees wants to ride the roller coaster, come on back. So we all ran back over there, and I was on the very first train. I was in the third car, first seat, or first row. And I sat on the left, the maintenance guy that I was sitting next to. There was a maintenance guy, a rides guy I sat next to. He sat next to me, and I was in the right seat, so I was on the right side. And I'll tell you what, you talking about loving it. Oh, God, it's fantastic. They let us ride it a few times. Maybe, I think we rode it 5 or 6 times that day. They let us ride it just a few times around. And then we had to go back to work, of course. So about a week later, they came and they handpicked a bunch of us. Want to know if we want to be in the Kings Island commercial, the first commercial they had for Vortex. So I got in on that. So I was on there, and we was filming it. We had to wear summer clothes to make it look like summertime. You know, they didn't want us wearing winter coats and things. And it was like, I think it was March 15th was the date that they filmed that commercial. March. It was in March. There was snow flurries. There were snow flurries that morning, and we was like, man, we was freezing. And they had brought coffee and hot chocolate and all that stuff there in the station, you know, for us to, you know, drink and try to keep warm. And they had blankets there that we could put on in between taping while they was taping it. But we'd have to take it off, and we'd have to act like it was summer, you know, and act all excited and all that good stuff. So anyway, that was great. It was awesome. We went around quite a few times. They had a camera that was attached to the fronts of the train. And again, I was in the when they filmed the episode, I was in the third car again, but I was in the second row this time, and on the right side. And the camera was hoisted on the very first car. So the very first car, in the very first seat, there was no riders because the camera was mounted. They had it mounted onto the train, so that way it can look at us while it was filming, going through the loops and everything with this camera in front of us. We was all scared to death that thing was going to fall off and fly off and hit us, you know, or something. But it didn't. It stayed intact. And it filmed us while we went around. So we had a ball. We really enjoyed it. We had fun making that, doing that commercial, and it was a really good perk of being a Kings Island employee. So Kings Island does have its perks for their employees at times. And just like this year, they let the employees ride the new antique cars. They got to ride them before everybody else did, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure they did the same thing with Banshee when it first opened. The employees got to ride that. And same thing with Diamondback. Same way with all the rides, okay? Back in the 80s, they had a thing a week before. It was called Dry Run Day. They call it Dry Run Day. And what that was all the families of all the employees of the park, they was allowed to bring all their families with them for free. And they got to go to the park, they got to eat for free at all the food stands. Now, or most of the food stands. Most of the food stands were open, and it was all free food. Everything was free for the employees. They was allowed to, you know, eat for free and everything. But what it was is you was only given so many Scooby bucks. Back then they had Scooby-Doo bucks. And it was the fake money, Kings Island money, and had, you know, a Yogi Bear or whatever on there. Well, what they would do was, in order to get the cashiers accustomed to doing it, they would spend the green bucks. They would bring them dollars, and we would run fake transactions. And we would pay back in, we had like plastic little money, little money thing. We pay them back in change, again, that little plastic money, and they would use that and spend that at different locations, food locations, and throughout the park. And that gave everybody experience, like in the food service, to run in the cash registers and yada, yada, yada. But anyway, the food, the drink was all free that day. All the rides were free, and it was always held the Saturday before the park opened to the public. It was always held the week before on a Saturday, and it was called Dry Run Day. And the employee, they did have to work that day, but after their shift, they was allowed to spend the time in the park with their family. Now, their family could be in the park all day, so it was really nice. It was a nice little thing that they did. Now, Cedar Fair, I don't know what they do with Kings Island's families. I don't know if they still do a dry run day. I don't think they do. I'm not positive on that. I know that they have the training sessions and things like that, but I don't know what they do with dry run day. Like Kings Island did back in the day when I worked there. It was owned by Taft Broadcasting Corporation, and which owns Channel 12. And Carl Linder used to own Chiquita Banana, United Dairy Farmers. Carl Linder, he was a big stockholder with Taft Broadcasting, which owned Kings Island. And back then it was a big, big deal. But I'll tell you what, we had a great time. This video is getting long. I'll hold back these stories for another time. But there's a lot of times that we had a lot of celebrities visit the park. I got to work concerts back in the 80s. I had a ball doing them, man. I met a lot of entertainers, from the Beach Boys to the Pointer Sisters to James Taylor and the Moody Blues and the Jets. God, I mean, tons of performers. New Kids on the Block from way back then. That was back in '86, I think it was, when they was real big. But they had the concerts at Timberwolf. And I was able to work concerts and things like that. And I got to do back behind concerts since I was I guess I was a glorified person. They really they had me doing like a morning person where I'd go in at 6 in the morning, get my food stand set up for the day, and I was by myself. I'd be going at 6 in the morning and working until 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then that was my shift. That's what I worked every day. And from 6 a.m. until 10 a.m., I was working by myself. I didn't have a supervisor over me because he didn't come in until 10 o'clock. And that's when the food stand opens at 10. But I would go get all the money for all the registers and all that stuff, and clean the front fryers and stock the Coke cups and French fry cups and everything. And I had the best stand in the park. Rivertown Potato Works. Where else could you work? That was the best stand in the whole park. Man, we had fun in that stand. It was fun, fun, fun. So, yes, I enjoyed Rivertown Potato Works. That was my main stand for the summer and also for Winterfest. And if they didn't open it during Winterfest, I got to work Munchin Tower, which is up on International Street. And that's where they had during Winterfest, they had hot coffee and cocoa and all that stuff. And that's that little stand, the soft pretzels. And it's that one little stand that's on the corner. It's all by its own little self. I think it's a Slurpee stand now. But it's right there, like, the Fest House is right there close by. Okay, so I don't know if you know where Munchin Tower is, but that's that one little tiny stand, little cubicle stand. And a lot of times I was in there working by myself, so I loved working by myself because it just seemed like, you know, I was able to get things done, and you know, and I enjoyed it better than having to trip over other people and everything else. So I enjoyed it. I really had fun. Kings Island was a great, awesome place to work. I loved it. Had fun. I would have stayed there if I could have made a career out of it to where I could have made, you know, really good money. I would have stayed with them. It was awesome. I mean, I really loved it. But like I said, Paramount, I think they killed the park. That's my opinion on it. It seems like a lot of the attractions that Paramount put into that park, you know, that installed to operate at that park, a lot of the attractions are not there anymore, like the big top spin ride. What's that? It was in the building. Gosh, can't even think. Tomb Raider. I had to think for a bit. Tomb Raider. I mean, it's no longer there. See, some of the other little things that they had in Action Zone, some of them little shows that they had, that water tower thing, and they let the Fast House run down. They let other little things run down. They took a lot of rides out and put some different rides in. And the only thing that they put in, I think, that was any good was Drop Tower, and the Delirium. Delirium, I think that's one of the best rides that they've ever put in, you know, flat ride wise in the park. So, like I said, I think Paramount, they killed the park. I mean, they really didn't put anything in. They took more glory out of the park than what they put in, and that's really a shame, because, you know, Kings Island really was magical back in the days. And if you're my age and growing up through the 70s and 80s at a magical place like Kings Island, the magic today is still not like it was back then, but it's better. I'm telling you, it's getting better. And thank you, Cedar Fair, for making it better. And I am so happy to see that people can go over and spend some nice quality family time at a beautiful park. I just can't say enough how thankful and grateful I am to Cedar Fair. And hopefully this is the Giga Coaster that everybody's wishing for, and that will definitely top the park off with a nice big giant coaster that the teenagers will just go crazy over, okay? And we know that's not going to be a flop, because Son of Beast was a flop. Look what happened with it. So many problems. It just wasn't constructed correctly, and unfortunately, they couldn't keep it. The damn wood was cracking and everything else. What could you do? And I think Cedar Fair made the right decision tearing it down. Unfortunately, it just wasn't constructed correctly. Okay, you had one person started building it, and in the middle of the thing, they fired that firm, and then they started doing in-house construction on it. And it just wasn't built correctly. During part of the building of Son of Beast, if you remember, they had a big windstorm that come through Ohio and knocked down a big section of track, got knocked down. So they had to rebuild that section, which delayed the opening of Son of Beast that year, if you remember. Then another time, it got struck by lightning and fried all the electrical system in the whole ride, and it further delayed the opening of Son of Beast. So there was a lot of problems with that ride. It was cursed from the get-go. And unfortunately, that was a huge dollar loss and huge mistake. And for Cedar Fair to go ahead and take it out was the best decision to do, unfortunately. Because it wouldn't have made economical sense for them to keep that ride. It would have cost them a lot more money in the long run to keep it open. It would be